story in every bottle.
Are we live?
We are live.
We're live. Live.
Cheers.
Excellent. Welcome, folks.
We're gonna do.
We're live. Right. We have a live audience today. Fantastic. Excellent. Before we get going, because we've got a lot of stuff to cover today, we have a lot of wines. We don't have any in our glass, which is really, that's not right. We need to put some wine in our glass.
Put something in our glass.
Oh, wait a minute. We're going to put some not wine from probably 2008 or something like that. But don't drink it yet. Let's just get ready.
Put something in. Okay.
There you go.
And I'm going to go to our just solo layout for us while we get our introductions going. I'm having on the solo layout, just us, while we get our introductions.
Okay.
Go to the live.
And hopefully Travis will come up to pour this for folks. Travis will be here soon.
Yeah.
John?
Would you like to, Matt? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm wearing the vest.
Yeah, nicely done.
So, folks, welcome. This is a unique show that we're going to do today. Unfortunately, Ken can't be with us live, but he's in the audience via the internet, and he's at home. But we are going to share some wines with you that that came from the very, very beginning of our existence. Actually, before our existence as a winery.
Before we existed.
We're going back all the way to 2008.
Yeah.
That's before we even thought about being a winery.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This was just hobby.
Yes, hobby time.
Yeah.
So we've got some really interesting wines, and I assure you, some of these wines will very likely be dumped.
Yes.
Probably not drank, but but we're going to learn something about it anyway, one way or the other. But before we do that, for all of you who are new to the show, if you are joining us for the very first time, we'd really like it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, which, if I'm correct, I believe would be somewhat under Marika over here, right? The subscribe button.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Under those wine bottles that you see in the corner.
And if you're on Facebook, there's a little bell. If you hit that bell, you'll subscribe on Facebook. And if you subscribe, you will be notified every time we go live, wherever we might be. And we may be in all kinds of various locations, on a mountain, on a body of water somewhere, skiing in the woods, hiking, who knows. But we will for sure go live almost every Monday night at 5:30. There's been a couple of exceptions in the last 2 years, but other than that, we will see everybody at 5:30 live on YouTube and Facebook. Subscribe, and you will get notification of that. Also, if you're joining us for the first time, we'd love it if you'd put your name in the comments, say hello. If you have any questions during the broadcast, please ask us any questions you like. Marika will be on hand to answer them directly and possibly bring them to the live show so we can talk about them live. And if you like what we're doing, please like the broadcast, share it with anybody you know who might have an interest in learning about the same topics or the topics that we're talking about. And I think I've covered all the intro, right?
Yep, you're good.
So what we're doing today, I went down not too long ago and dug deep into my cellar and discovered what turned out to be probably 75 or 100 bottles of wine that came from the very, very beginning of our. So it's interesting. We have a live audience today. So we have some audience members that are cracking up in the background. And I don't know why, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. I'm sure they'll tell us. So anyway, we discovered 75 or 100 bottles of wines that go back to, like we said earlier, pre-winery.
Yeah.
2008. One of them isn't dated, probably could be even earlier than 2008.
Yeah.
We've been making wines together since what, 2004, 2003?
Maybe. At least beer.
It's beer for sure.
Yeah.
Ken's been making
Ken
that
says
since.
7.
7 is the first wine you made?
I think
The
Ken
first
made some big wines before that.
What do you say?
2006.
2006. Okay,
Oh,
good.
I can't read fingers. He was doing this, and I counted 7.
So yeah, you should have the voice up if you can, so
Yeah.
people
we
can hear him.
Yeah.
So anyway, in the very beginning, when we first started this winery, we started experimenting with anything and everything. Ken, in the earliest time, was making beer, and then we had this wine group that we were trying wines from around the world for several years before 2006, and then I brought a blueberry wine to the wine group that I got in Vermont, in somewhere over on the west side of Vermont.
It was the one, Charlotte Village. I went
Charlotte
there
Village,
last
yes.
month. And of course, the one wine that they didn't have was their dry blueberry
Their
wine.
dry blueberry wine.
They had this semi-dry or a sweeter one, but it was...
Well, it's good. I'm glad they're still there.
They are
so
still
that's
there.
good news, because that was at least 15 years ago. And I brought this wine back, and we were having a wine tasting where we were trying all of these wines from all over the world, and they were all in bags. It was entirely blind. And so I snuck this blueberry wine into this blind tasting, and it was quite interesting. Everybody was intrigued by it. Nobody called it a blueberry wine. Everybody suspected it was another grape wine from somewhere. They didn't know where. And when we unveiled the fact that it was a blueberry wine, it blew all our minds. And it really was probably one of the pivotal moments that sort of set us on the path to exploring things that we've explored. I think you went the next day.
Yeah.
And
we picked a 5-gallon bucket of blueberries at our neighbor's blueberry bushes and brought it to Ken and told him to make wine like that.
You dropped it off on the front steps
day,
on the next day, yeah. And we may have a wine that's, I don't know if it's from that period, but there's a blueberry wine here that's pretty old, and one of the early ones. Yeah, no, well, we'll see in a minute. So anyway, we started fermenting and crafting wines from just about any source that we could find, and most of those sources were fruits that grew in Ken's yard or my yard, or that you collected from neighborhood blueberry yards.
A lot of foraging back then.
Yeah. We didn't need a lot. We were making 5-gallon batches, so we didn't need huge volumes of fruit to make it work. We just needed, 20 pounds, 30 pounds or something like that. Is that right? Is that about right, Ken, for most of the fruit?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So today will be the first of several episodes that we're going to hold where I'm going to bring wines from my cellar from various stages of this development. Today is one of the earliest. These are some of the oldest, and I would venture to say most unique wines that we created. You will note there are dump buckets on your table because I'm quite confident that you will likely want to dump some of these out. Don't feel bad. It's totally okay. We're trying to learn a little bit about our early days. We're helping you become a little more familiar with about how we were thinking in the early days of this process. And maybe, hey, who knows? Maybe we hit on something. Maybe there's something here that's really interesting.
We could be surprised.
So everybody has in their glass a wine that was made entirely from Japanese knotweed. So maybe I can hold this up here. Does that show up?
Yeah, it's not focused.
There we
If
go.
you hold it right up to the camera, it might autofocus.
Might
on it.
autofocus. There you go.
Yep. No. Oh yeah, not wine number 2 raw.
Not wine number 2. So I don't know if all of you in the audience are familiar with Japanese knotweed, but it's a very abundant plant in this part of the world. Maybe more abundant than most people would like. And Ken actually had a huge field of it in back that he's been battling for the last 20 years to try and keep it down. And so he thought, well, wouldn't it be cool? We learned actually that Japanese knotweed is actually a food in Asia. There are lots of people who eat the stalks, kind of like rhubarb, of Japanese knotweed. And so when we learned that it was food, we thought, well, wait, maybe it can be wine too. And what a great way to deal with all that knotweed that was spreading throughout the fields of all of our homes. If we turned it into wine and it was a success, well, then we'd have a good use for all of that knotweed. So this wine was not wine number 2. And go ahead, you could bring that in, Travis. So,
Of course, it's food, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look at you, Chuck.
Yeah. We're going all out.
Yeah, I guess.
They want the close up.
No, close. So I don't know. Ken, do you want to add anything about this wine before we taste it?
Oh, we've already all tasted it. Sorry.
Everybody's already tasted, so good. I haven't.
Way too much.
Well, what do we think of the nose? What do you think of the nose before you put it in your mouth?
I already put it in my mouth too.
It's actually got a nice nose.
It smells like a garden. It smells
a little
earthy.
fruity.
I think it smells earthy.
Yeah, I always
like-
thought it smelled kind of like dirt.
Yeah.
And it still
But nice
smells
dirt.
kind of like dirt, and that the earthy dirt kind of thing. And what I really didn't like about it, but it's really mellowed out over time. It's not nearly as strong as it was way back when. I love the color of it
It tastes mead-like to me.
I actually, you say dirt. I get actually a little bit of fruity character off of it, which is odd because knotweed is not a fruity taste by any sense of the imagination. But there's a.
But it's kind of, it actually, I don't know, maybe it's because you talked about rhubarb stalks, but I think it actually kind of smells
Smells like rhubarb?
sort of rhubarby, or like how Swiss chard is kind of fruity smelling.
You put the name to it.
Swiss chard, yeah. That little
And
bit
I don't know,
of-
I think I'm maybe getting thrown off by the color and because he said
Yeah.
rhubarb stalks, but
Well, isn't that interesting? The color too. Where does that color come from? I mean, there's no that color doesn't exist in anything I've seen in knotweed, right?
No,
I mean that's
no, I
like
have no
a
idea where the
rosé.
color came from.
I think we should give Ken the floor.
Yeah, Ken, what do
Go
you
ahead,
have to say?
Yeah, that's interesting. Just trying to look at the color from here because when we made that wine, it was a straw-colored wine, a white wine. And I remember distinctly after making that wine and we were tasting it after it had gotten into the bottle, and it had an aroma like baby wipes, like a chin that you would
I
get.
remember
You're talking about that, yeah.
Kids. And then we moved on and we're experimenting with other stuff. And about 2 years later, I pulled a bottle out of the cellar. You were coming over, we were all getting together, and poured it and handed it to you when you walked in the door, Bob. And I said, guess what this is? And you were flummoxed by it. You didn't know what it was. It tasted like a white wine, and the baby white stuff had gone away. And but it didn't have that color. That color had to come from just sitting in the cellar all those years.
So a little oxidation.
Yeah.
But it's really got a nice kind of there's a kind of a brick color to it, but it's a little pink in there.
It looks
a
like
nice
the
color.
blackberry mead.
Do we have any idea of the alcohol content?
Yeah, I would guess it was asked in the audience if we had if a knowledge of the alcohol content. Ken, do you?
It was probably around 12%. I don't have the notes for that. That's in a book on my bench downstairs at the winery, so I don't have that here. But I'm sure I have the notes for it. I do know that we did a knotweed batch number 1, batch number 2, and then I was doing something separating them, either different yeasts or different amounts of knotweed. And then some we left raw, which is what you're having there, and some we back sweetened. We added a little bit of sugar before we bottled it. So that's a completely dry, it's just Japanese knotweed that I harvested in my backyard when they were about a half foot tall to a foot tall, and chopped them up, threw them in a bucket with some water and sugar and some wine yeast, and let it go.
I don't know what everybody else thinks, but
Geraldine says this was one of her favorites.
Wow.
Really not wine.
All right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm impressed that it's still alive as a wine. Right?
Yeah.
Because fruit wines and the stuff we made, we never had any expectation that it would live more than 5 years in the bottle. So I think it's testimony to the ingredients of knotweed. It's supposed to be a very high antioxidant thing. And I would say it's got, it's preserved itself well. So
It's loaded with resveratrol.
resveratrol. So it's really done that well, and it still drinks like a wine. Is it a wine that I think we should make? No, I don't think so. It doesn't have the intensity, that I think that earthiness, those flavors to me don't really make a nice wine that I like to drink.
So I somewhat agree with you, but somewhat disagree. The disagree part would be that very few of our wines are single single fruit wines.
Yeah.
So as a wine, as a not wine, all by itself, with nothing else added to it, I agree with you. But I do wonder whether some of the character that's delivered here wouldn't be a nice addition to some other blend
so.
that might work, because it held up well.
Yeah.
It has some flavor that's intriguing to me. It's not entirely without flavor. So
I think it probably did evolve because he made not mead and did other iterations of this.
sure. And quite frankly, the only reason that we don't have this in any of our products today is that Japanese knotweed is not considered a food by the FDA. So technically speaking, we can't put Japanese knotweed in a bottle of wine because it's not considered a food. And until we got it registered as a food, we can't use it to make wine.
Interesting.
Otherwise, possibly Ken, you might have explored further.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I'll reach back out to the TTB and put another recipe up there to see if they'll accept it this time, because I would like to use it as a blender, just like rhubarb is used in our Lake House White or our Winnie White. I think Japanese knotweed, it would be great to use it as a blender.
Yeah, I think there's something here. I think there's some interesting flavors here that would actually possibly enhance a wine of some blend, but I don't know. So we do have a mic set out front. So if anybody in the audience has any comments about this particular wine, I invite you to come up and share those with the public. So you can't. I understand, Matt.
It's the perfect pairing with Swiss chard.
You got to get close to the mic.
With Swiss chard, with beet greens, with a borscht soup. It's the perfect pairing. It's got that finish of the Swiss chard or the beet greens on the end of it. I think it'd be ideal pairing with any of those products.
So I'm assuming that means you liked it.
I did. I didn't like the bouquet. I didn't really dig the beginning of the bouquet.
Yep.
I still think there's a little bit of that baby white turpentine kind of thing going on at the very beginning.
Yep.
But as a flavor and for the finish, again, it depends on what you pair it with. But yeah, there's certain vegetables and root vegetables that this would be ideal with. Maybe parsnips.
I've had a beet wine.
Thank you, Matt.
From Zorvino. They have a lot of very wild sort of offshoot wines. I still have a lavender honey one at home, but I did get a beet wine from Zorvino that it did taste quite a bit like beets. It was a little sweeter. It was a little sweeter, but yeah, beautiful color but did kind of this sort of flavor profile, that sort of vegetable-y. Interesting.
So.
Oh, okay. I misinterpreted Geraldine. She was responding to Christine. Christine was talking about what she was eating, and that Geraldine was saying that the turkey bacon jam is one of her favorites, not the wine. She said she likes the not mead, but not as much as 3 Honey, of course.
Yeah. Okay, so
right,
let's do the next one. We got a lot of wines to go through, so we should move on. This next wine, this was made actually when we were officially a winery. It was made in 2012, and it was our early introduction to kiwi. The kiwi berry, not the kiwi that we know from the tropical world. The kiwi berry is a cold climate kiwi. It's small, it grows on a vine, and it grows throughout the Northeast where it's too cold to grow the other type. In fact, there are varieties of these kiwis that will grow in Siberia. They really are cold hardy. And a friend of ours, Greg Mee, who owns Cold Garden Spirits, had a garden that was well appointed with lots of interesting fruits. And he introduced us to his kiwis one year. He didn't have a use for them, and he had about 5 vines. So we collected, I don't know, probably 100 pounds or so. Ken will correct me if I'm wrong. And we made wine from those kiwis from kiwi berries for a few years. And in fact, we still use kiwi berries in some of our wines today. I believe it's our Winnie White has a kiwi berry in it. And we also have a dessert wine, what is the kiwi dessert wine, Marika? I'm drawn
That's
away.
the Passion Popper.
Passion Popper. Yep. Thank you.
But the new one, Bob, is the Meredith Bay White.
Okay, good. So this is one of the earliest versions. I have to say too, we struggled a lot with this kiwi berry. It evolves in very strange and unique ways in the bottle. For example, we would age it, and before bottling it, we would sample it, and it would be delicious, and we think, wow, this is going to be a great wine. We put it in the bottle, and a year later, it would be a different wine altogether. And in some cases, we really weren't happy with the results. So we tried aging it in the tank for a couple years so that it would evolve here before we put it in a bottle and sold it to our customers. And that worked to some degree, but we still found it changed in strange ways in the bottle, and it was hard for us to control. And I think some of the control you gained over it was coming from blending, right, Ken?
Yeah, I think so. It still perplexes me a little bit, but last year I was able to dig back into kiwis again, this time getting them from UNH and able to ripen them. And I think I've figured out how to blend them into our Meredith Bay White. I have a new batch of kiwi berries fermenting downstairs right now. You did a punch down on that yesterday, right, Bob?
Yep.
And the very first vintage came out when we first opened to the public in 2011. We had a total of maybe 10 bottles. That was all I produced from Greg Mee's vines that first year. But you put out a leak to the newspaper that went national, if I remember correctly, Bob, that we were making wine out of these kiwi berries, but we only had 10 bottles. So we had people coming to your house looking for them, and they're all sold out, unfortunately.
Yes. The one press release that I sent out ended up with AP News, and it went across the country that this winery in New Hampshire was making wine from kiwi berries. And literally everyone showed up at our door looking for this wine. And what was it? 10 bottles, I think you said, right? Yeah, it was gone. It was good attention, I guess.
I think at some point last year we did an episode on kiwi berries.
We did.
We found a bunch of library wine, and I remember some of them had gone funky.
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
But some, I remember that was when we found, to me, they tasted like those sort of wild fermented farmhouse ales. This is sort of more the beer-like.
Yeah.
That was a fun tasting. To me, this smells like baby wipes. To me.
Wow.
I don't get that either.
Yeah,
I
I'm
get
not getting that
this
now.
one.
Thank you, Matt. I actually don't mind the nose on this at
Yeah,
all.
I like the nose.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if it's baby wipes.
Everybody has their own. Everybody has their own taste buds and their own aroma.
It's a very stone fruit kind of nose.
So what's it smell like, Bob? What's the aroma?
Peachy.
Try to put words to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Challenging me in public, Ken. That's dangerous. I have to concur. Matt suggested there's a peachy quality to it, and I think there is. I think I have to agree.
Yeah, it sort of has a kiwi quality to it. I mean, this wine has always had a very unique aroma. It was very kind of biting and sharp, and this is really mellowed out a lot. It's a really nice, soft, fragrant fruit kind of smell. It's very nice. I think actually age is really done well with this wine.
It's gotten darker. It's more of a gold color than it was when you originally bottled it. I think it's quite drinkable though.
Yeah, I've tasted it. It's really good.
Yeah.
Spicy.
I think yes. I actually think it's better than it was years ago. It's really mellowed out.
Yeah, it always had a very racy, very strong acid bite to it. And that's always been part of the struggle.
It's still got its acidity, but it's not nearly as sharp as it was in the days past. It's definitely rounding out as it gets older. And we're talking, it's 2012, so it's over 10 years old.
Yeah, it's really surprising. I really would have had no expectations that the flavor would have held up. The viscosity of the mid palate is really nice, and it finishes with that a kind of acidity, kind of a watery acidity.
Mouth watering.
Yeah,
you want to go back for more.
I would say that the aging is done really well. I'd like it. I'd like to drink it, and I'm glad we're back to using kiwis as an adjunct.
Bravo. Well, Ken has always felt like this fruit has a future.
Yeah.
And I have agreed. There's such interesting characteristics that come out of the various ways in which we've used this fruit over the years that I think it's definitely worth continuing to explore. Ken, we'll have to save some of this. You've got to try it. It's actually really nice. Anybody from the audience have any comments about the kiwi berry? You want to come up to the mic and share?
Does anybody like it?
Does anybody like it?
Nobody like it. One like. There's kind of
Couple okays.
Yeah.
No, your comment was like spot on, Bob. That's how it felt. Like first the kiwi when I first started here, I didn't like it. Then all of a sudden, I really loved it.
Yeah.
And so this, you like it because it smells like it's gonna pop, but then you taste it, and you're like, oh,
No.
like it's mellow.
Yeah.
I'm not used to anything being mellow with the kiwi berry in it,
Yeah.
so I like it.
Well,
Excellent.
It doesn't taste that way.
yeah.
Did you mention the mead? Or
I
was that
thought
for the other
the
ones?
first one
The first
smelled
one,
like
okay.
mead. This one
Yeah.
a little less so, but I get it some.
All right. Well, then let's move on. Next one.
That's not a dumper.
That's not a dumper for sure.
It is for me. It lasts a little bit, mostly just because we've got 5 more wines to try.
Got to keep moving.
We'll get through them.
So what's next, Bob?
The next one is our 11 rhubarb. Why don't you tell us about this?
Well, I tried to look back for my notes, and I find no record of that whatsoever.
It doesn't exist. We know it exists.
That's your
So,
head.
unfortunately,
definitely
I have a suspicion, though. It's always a challenge to source enough materials that I need to make wine, and I never know exactly what volume I'm going to make, and especially in the early years. So I likely had a bunch of rhubarb that was left over in the freezer, and it's better to store it as wine than it is to store it as a frozen veggie. So I probably just took a bunch of rhubarb and put some water and sugar into it and fermented it. And for whatever reason, it probably got blended into Lake House White or Whiteface or whatever wines we were making back then. But I had some left over and thought maybe we'll just bottle it to see what it tastes like as it ages. So I've never done that. So save me some of this one because I'd like to see what this tastes like.
Ooh.
Yeah, I believe this is the last. I don't know that there's another one of these. We don't know. It's old.
What's it smell like?
Now this has a funky nose to me. This has some of that.
Oh, it's got a good nose.
This has some of that petrol or not or no like model glue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. It's
It's not a good nose. And what's interesting is that this is a straight rhubarb. We don't make, and we have never made for public consumption, a straight rhubarb. All of our rhubarb wine has been as part of a blend of some kind. So this was never intended to be a wine to be drank by itself as a wine. So
It does.
Keep that
It
in
tastes
mind.
like rhubarb. I've always wanted a really rhubarby wine. I don't know. I grew up eating rhubarb a lot, and I love the straight, very tart rhubarb, like the those meeting house sodas that we get sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
They have a blueberry and they have a rhubarb soda, and it is quite a bit sweetened for sure, but it is very rhubarb
Clearly
in its
rhubarb.
flavor. And I've always hoped to find a wine like that. I'm actually really excited about our next strawberry rhubarb because you taste the rhubarb so much more in it. But I could drink this one.
the taste is fine to me. I'm okay with it. The nose is off-putting. I'm not enjoying the nose. Yeah.
Smell, I don't think so.
But the taste isn't bad. It's clearly got that rhubarb. It's very vegetable. It's earthy. It's dry, grassy.
Yeah.
Excellent.
yeah. I think I would agree with Marika. It does have sort of tastes like rhubarb in
Yeah.
a way. Yeah. Yeah. With a little bit. And it's funny. It's in our Lake House White, and having it just by itself here, I get that flavor in the Lake House White, and I could never
Pin it to the rhubarb.
I didn't know where that flavor was, but it's clearly this. That the nose is really terrible. I mean, it has nothing good about it, right? I don't, but maybe that's just the nose you get from rhubarb, but clearly it is. 'cause
Clearly
we
it
have
is.
So
Well,
what
10 years
was great
later or
about,
whatever.
about the Lake House White, it's the blend. We're back to rhubarb being such a great blending thing, and I get
If you're smelling nail polish, that was not in there originally, that developed through aging through the cork and an unstable wine. It's
it's not nail polish.
Well,
It's
nail polish remover, somebody said.
See the blisters? That's from chopping frozen rhubarb. This is what it smells like when you punch rhubarb
when you punch it down,
wine
yeah.
down.
Is it? Yeah. Mhm.
I love this.
So let's do it this way. Everybody who liked the wine, hands up. Anybody? How many absolutely didn't like the wine? Got one. And a couple so-sos? So-sos? Okay, good. That's a nice way for us to get a perspective of everybody's opinion about it.
Right.
So thank you.
I go back to this as a standalone. It would never. It's
Never intended.
Never make it. But,
No.
but as having had this experience and know what it's like what the rhubarb is as a matter of blending, this is really great.
So Ken, just real quick, rhubarb is in our Lake House White. What else do you use it in? Is there another?
I use it in the Winnie White and the Meredith Bay White as well. And then we did a spring in session, which was a session mead with some rhubarb in it. And there's lots of opportunities for the future with it.
Well, and strawberry rhubarb.
And strawberry
And
rhubarb.
strawberry rhubarb, of course.
Of course. Yeah. Oh, we're so excited. We're just weeks away from releasing our strawberry rhubarb sparkling wine.
This has been the cruelest, longest tease.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's so good. Wait till you try it. Oh, I can't wait.
This would be good sparkling, but Ken knows I want everything sparkling. So.
All right. So the next one. We're into our fourth wine. We have
Nice job.
We have 3 more to go. We have plenty of time. We're going to make
Well,
it.
yeah. We're
this-
halfway through.
This one is Ken, did you discover any more about this? Was the BB 10.2
So I know exactly what that is.
Good, excellent.
That's back when we were experimenting with blueberries. Ever since that fateful time back in 07 or 08, when Chuck showed up with a bucket of blueberries and I turned it into terrible tasting wine, I had to try to figure out how to make it taste like that good dry blueberry wine that Bob brought from Vermont. So in 2010, for this vintage, I had 3 different blueberry batches going simultaneously. One I used 5 pounds per gallon of blueberries, one I used 6 pounds of blueberries per gallon, and one I used 7 pounds of blueberries per gallon. This is a blend of all those with a different sweetening level.
Oh.
But it put me down the path. Petite Blue is made with 6 pounds per gallon.
Again, I haven't tasted it yet, but the nose on this is
The nose
fantastic.
is great. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's very cloudy,
It's oddly cloudy.
It's
Yeah.
very cloudy, yeah.
but
What is that nose? It's got a candy character to it. It
it smells sweet. It smells very sweet.
smells sweet.
It smells like deep blue.
It smells a little bit like deep blue. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit like what?
Deep blue.
Yeah. It smells like blueberries. Yeah.
But it's remarkable as from it's 12 years old or 11 years old that it has this much fruit coming on the nose.
We sampled this on August 31st in 2020. We did a deep dive into blueberries, and we thought this was outstanding, this bottle.
It actually tastes very nice. It's a little sweeter. This is definitely sweeter than your classic Petite Blue. But it's nice. It's got a nice flavor to it.
Bob,
It's interesting that it's sweeter. I did no back sweetening.
Blueberry spread and blueberry cheese that I highly recommend nibbling along with this.
What did you say, Ken?
There is no back sweetening to this wine whatsoever.
Really?
Yep.
Ken, do you have any insight on the cloudiness? Would that have not been filtered or?
It was not filtered. I did. I'm looking back through my notes right now. There was a little bit of a challenge with some sulfur compounds developing, but then I splash racked it into the can and it seemed like it was all right. This was when I learned that the blueberry wines tend to hold carbon dioxide also.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's remarkably sweet for a wine that has no added sugar. It has a sweet character to it, which suggests it's very fruity, which to be 11, 12 years old and be this fruity and taste this nice. It's really come along nice. It's got a nice body to it too.
Yeah.
The finish is a little drier, not quite bitter, but it's not as sweet. It's at the end.
It's got a little muskiness on it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of does, doesn't it? Yeah. And it doesn't have that any over ripeness going on yet, like a hazelnutty thing or raisin thing at all. It's very blueberry, almost apple-y too to me, in as a matter of the mid palate. And then it finishes without a lot of tannin. So it's not or acidity. It just kind of falls off at the end for me, kind of watery.
Well, and like Marika said, it does have a dryness.
Ken, is it unfiltered or filtered?
This one was unfiltered, and it's interesting how this happened, especially with the kiwi, but also early on with our crabapple wine. We would filter the wine, and it would be brilliant going into the bottle, and then 6 months or a year later, those little tiny molecules that Bob accurately described before would join together and end up forming large particles that would settle out. In the crabapple wine, it turned out to be these little red flakes, kind of looked like hot pepper flakes floating around in the bottle. You remember that, you guys?
I do actually, yes. Yes.
Wow.
I'm surprised. It's very good. Really. So, Paul, how many liked this blueberry wine? Oh, more than that's good. Excellent. Anybody just did not like it? One person. Okay. So. We have at least one so. Okay. Great. All right. Moving right along.
We're behind schedule.
We're behind schedule. We have 20 minutes. Yellowtail. So yeah. So in the very early days, and this is from 2008. So again, 2008, we had not decided that we were going to go down this road yet. We had not decided we were going to be a winery. We hadn't actually even considered it in 2008. It wasn't until 9 or 10 that we really started talking more seriously about the concept of going to opening a winery. So this was just experimenting. So we used to go down to the docks. Initially, we went to the docks in Boston.
Yeah, Chelsea.
That was a bad experience. The grapes from we were they would sell us anything. We were like, okay, we'll buy it. And we brought home these grapes that had mold growing on them. They're just horrible. And we didn't have the tools to work with them. So Ken and I sat in the beer shed squeezing the grapes by hand to crush them. And boy, we made some awful wine that first batch. But we did discover that there's a dealer out of Massachusetts that brings fine quality grapes from around the world.
Yeah.
That's the beer wine hobby in Woburn.
Beer and wine hobby, yes. And they actually got them from M&M, which is the larger dealer in Hartford, who actually has relationships with some of the large growers in California, and they would bring really high quality grapes and transport them in a way that allowed them to arrive as fresh as one could expect for a grape that was traveling 3,000 miles across the country. So we started buying grapes from Beer and Wine Hobby and getting some really excellent quality grapes and learning about making classic wines. And again, we hadn't decided that we were going to be a winery, so we would just collect our wine bottles from all of our various houses. And so somebody was buying Yellowtail at the time. I don't know who that would have been, but.
Yeah, well, so our wine club was a group of about 20 people.
That's true. So it could have been
have
any number of
theme.
things.
We could have had an Australia theme. We could have had a Shiraz Syrah theme. Usually it was a varietal or a style of wine. more than it was a region. So this would have been appropriate for our Chardonnay night, from around the world,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Because we did blind tastings on everything.
Yeah.
And the game was to see if you could match the wine to the bottle. It was fun. I learned so
I need
much.
to have friends that I can do that.
Yeah, it was really a wine club was really a lot of fun, and it taught us all so much.
So Ken, this is S.A. Syrah. What does that mean?
It says XA.
S.A.
Oh, South African or South American.
Oh, okay. So this was
That's
one
the Chilean. I think those are Chilean grapes that we got.
All right.
So this would have been maybe our third year of doing this project.
It's 2008.
2008. So you said 2006 we started?
Yeah, 2006. So this is but 2008, we probably got grapes from Chelsea in 2007 in the fall. And then in May of 2008, we got these grapes. And then we could have bought more in the fall of 2008.
Right.
And tell us, Ken, this bottle is it's a 1.5 liter bottle. So tell us about the difference in aging that we might expect from a larger bottle.
Yeah, it just sort of slows things down a little bit. There's more liquid behind that cork as opposed to a half bottle or a regular sized bottle. So the amount of oxygen that's going past the
There you go. Just hold it.
cork
Yep. Good.
goes into a much larger volume of wine. So larger bottles of wine will age longer than smaller bottles. Some of the tricks, I remember my favorite Burgundy came out of a half bottle from Clos de Vougeot, and the wines were put into half bottles on purpose because these Pinot Noirs that grew at Clos de Vougeot were so grippy in their youth, they needed a good 10 years. And if you put them in a half-size bottle, you would get to where they were drinking properly in a shorter time frame.
Wow. What do you think of the nose, Bob?
I'm fascinated by it. And I wish I could. I'm so bad with the tying, my memory, being able to put labels on things.
Stinky.
I don't think it's stinky at all. There's something interesting about that nose that's very recognizable to me, and I can't put a name to it. I'm hoping you come up with it. Cardboard.
I think it smells. I think it
Who said
smells
that?
very fruity.
I can see that.
I think it's gonna change a lot as you swirl it in your glass, and it's been trapped in that bottle for 12, 15 years, so it needs to interact with the air.
Yeah.
I agree. There's a fruitiness to it. There's a very particular fruit, or
It smells like a red grape wine. That this is what I would expect a grape wine to smell like. It doesn't really have anything off for me as a matter of grape wine.
I think there's a roundness. I almost think that, like
to the nose.
no, the flavor. It's kind of a roundness or a kind of
Grapes are always
kind of a
described with other
butteriness
fruits, so maybe it smells like blueberries or blackberries.
Yeah, no, there's something else in it, and I'm drawing a blank on putting a name to it. Maybe Matt will be able to help. He's got a great nose.
You said it's
got a great memory.
It's Syrah.
It's a Syrah grape. Yeah.
I wonder. Yeah.
Anyway,
I think that's what we were just drinking a
Syrah
Chilean
grapes
Syrah
from
a
Chile.
couple nights ago.
I'm really impressed that first off that this is this old and this alive, flavorful, balanced. It's I would say it to me it's as good as any of some of the wines we had last night with our barbecue. But I think
which is saying a lot.
which is saying a lot.
Some very nice wines.
Guys, that wine I think is one of the first times that we used our press that we bought down in Boston, Bob. Remember that? And we brought it out to my barn, and we used a big long pole to squeeze everything out of the grapes.
So that's it. First of all, that press is sitting out beside the winery. It's in parts. We still have it. But yes, one of the things that we wanted to get the most out of our experience with these grapes, and the way we did it was we attached a the press had a handle on it that was what, a foot or 2 feet long for cranking the press, right? So we decided to put a 15-foot handle on the press. And Chuck and I would move this 15-foot 2x4 around. Really,
we bent the bar.
we really got every last bit of anything that those grapes were able to give up into that wine. Which the interesting thing is, that's going to result in much higher tannins, and tannins are what's required to age a wine.
Yeah.
So it is part of the reason why you just described this as is holding up well, because we were able to squeeze so many tannins off of those skins into the bottle that it's given it a chance to hold up in over time. So.
I can't believe that we made this that long ago and it's still drinking as well as it does. I think it finishes a little bit bitter, and maybe that's from squeezing those seeds a little bit to jeepers to the point where we got some bitter tannins in there. But I'm a thumbs up on this one. I think this is finally reached its age of maturity. So, bravo.
Marika?
I like this one. It's yeah.
Yeah. Theoretically,
Somebody asked in the audience whether reds last longer. Generally, reds do last longer because reds are usually higher in tannin, because the tannin comes from the skin of the fruit, which is what gives it its color. So those very often red wines are held up in cellars a lot longer than white wines because of the higher tannin levels. And that's certainly the case with this one. Although I find this wine is changing a lot.
It is evolving.
As it's staying open, yeah.
Was this one casked in oak?
No, I don't believe so. Ken, do you know if you used staves or?
So,
Or oak
good
chip?
question, Matt. Right around 2008, we invested in a 20-gallon French oak barrel, which is my favorite barrel. I still use it to this day. But I don't have my notes in front of me for this wine, so I'm not sure that this went into that little barrel. In 2009, we certainly were using it all the time. And then when we became a commercial winery, we bought a couple of full-size barrels in 2010.
American oak.
This wine would be ideal with a chuck roast or a pot roast and a cute Irish barmaid.
Thank you, Matt.
So,
Actually, so I was gonna say this is great for me. So I'm getting better at tasting different actual grape wines, because most of my wine experience comes from here, not the regular wine world. But 2 nights ago we opened a Chilean Carbonera Syrah blend, and we had it with beef short ribs, and it
has some of the
tastes the
characteristics.
same. Yeah, I can tell that it's the same type of wine,
That's good.
and it was really good with beef short ribs.
Yeah.
So,
This is too-
how many hands up for those who like this wine? That's good, about half.
Yep.
Excellent. And who did not like it? Absolutely did not like it. A couple. Okay, good. And anybody on the fence? I think we saw somebody with a. Well, again, I have to say, everybody's taste buds are different. Everybody seeks out different styles of wine. Some people like sweeter wine, some people like white wine, some people like red wine. So stylistically, everybody's going to approach every wine differently, and we're not all going to agree. And that's what makes it all the more interesting and all the more fun. So,
Did I miss this? Do you know what region of Chile
no,
we got this from?
No.
Just
I wish, but maybe Ken knows. I don't think so.
no, he's not sure.
No, we don't get that info.
That's just wondering.
So we have 2 more wines. I really brought this wine more for the story than anything else. So in the early days, we would buy grapes and we'd bring them up and make wines like we did this one. And Ken discovered that this is actually a practice in the wine world. A lot of home winemakers engage in this practice, and actually some wine businesses do as well. Some wineries do as well. And that is, oftentimes, at the end of the press, there's still a lot of goodness left in the grape skins and the pulp. And there's a practice of adding additional sugar and doing a second re-ferment, capturing all of the the leftover tannin, and especially if you didn't press it with a 15-foot pole, where you didn't squeeze all of the goodness out of the grape.
Yeah.
And so we thought, well, perfect. We'll get some more mileage. We'll spend, $100 on grapes to make, so many cases of wine, and then we'll add some sugar and some water, and we'll do a second press, and we'll get another, 20 or 30 or 40 bottles. Is that correct, Ken? Was that described correctly?
Yeah, you get about a third. You can re-ferment the pomace and get another third of what you made in your original batch, and it tends to be less fruity, less engaging, less mouthfeel. But people would do this as a table wine, as a simple table wine. You stretch $1. It fits very closely with the Yankee mentality.
Yeah.
Get everything you can out of that.
So we don't need to rinse. This is actually what we called. So we call this. You'll see on the name of the bottle a bedpan Cabernet. And the reason for that is that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Maya had this container that was it actually I don't think was a bedpan, but it had the shape and looked like a bedpan.
It looked like a bedpan,
right?
yeah.
Right, that's exactly what it was. It's still staple gunned into the ceiling of the brewery.
Yeah. But how was it used in the?
We were catching the last drips out of the press that weren't going into the carboy. So when we were picking up the bucket, we would use that little container to catch the drips because we didn't want to waste even a couple of drips of the wine.
Wow.
So this is bedpan cab.
That's probably quite disappointing after the last one.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, apparently.
Well, actually, the wine itself didn't end up in the bedpan.
Yeah, I've got to hear the story behind this one.
That's the story.
So when we first opened it, it had a little bit of the geranium.
Yes,
and,
it has a lot of the geranium.
But as I've swirled
Is it blowing off?
It seems to be blowing off a bit, and there's a little bit more normal kind of. That's got to be
9.
What year is this from, Bob?
Sediment.
Yeah.
Yep.
2009.
2009, Ken.
2009.
Cabernet.
Are you sensing gunpowder gin on this?
gunpowder gin. It's great. Yeah, Cabernet Sauvignon, second press.
Second press.
Second running.
Second running. So the bedpan was a fun name that we gave it just for fun, for our own collection of wines. It has nothing to do with what the outcome is. This is what would be referred to as a second press wine. It is it's the material that's left over after pressing the first batch. You add some sugar and water, and you extract even more character and flavor out of the leftover pomace that's finished from the first pressing, and you can make a wine that you can drink, as Ken said, as a table wine. I'm sure that it was not meant to be aged in a cellar for 14 years or whatever. 13 years is what it is. So it's not meant to be here today, but we have some in the cellar, and I thought it would be fun to tell the story of our second press, so-called bedpan cabs.
Yeah, that was a fun time. I really enjoyed it.
I can't believe that's out on the airwaves now, Bob.
I know. Jeez, I hope I didn't blow it.
It's escaped the treehouse.
Yeah.
So it has, geranium is the word. It has this really intense nose, which I agree, it is, as Chuck said, is blowing off a little bit.
I would just dump it. That's a dumper.
Yeah, it's surprisingly good as a matter of a bright red wine with a lot of tannins in it. I mean, it's still like
Does it taste a little sweet too?
It tastes sweet.
Yeah.
It's like.
Would you think there'd be any
sweet
residual sugar in this, Ken?
No, not at all.
Because it tastes sweet.
It does, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's got the bouquet of gunpowder gin.
And gunpowder
I don't
gin.
know what goes in gunpowder gin, but it's an Irish gin.
Yeah.
And it's there.
Yeah. Well, it's got
a bottle from your hand.
Yeah. It's that.
Bob, try with the Copa, top right.
It has
That makes it better.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it's even this good.
It tastes as good as it does.
I thought it would be utterly undrinkable, and I think that people generally like this wine when we first made it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
That's shocking.
So I'm gonna-
We sold that. We sold a 2010 vintage of a second press wine, and we called it Cottage Red
That was Cottage Red. Yeah, I remember that. And that sold well.
because it was just, it wasn't the Lake House Red. It was the Cottage Red.
So,
it was a simple wine.
We're going to do this again in a few months. And we have another range of wines from our cellar. And Cottage Red is one of those wines. I have some of those in the cellar. So those are actually commercially available to our customers in the first year or two, right? I don't remember how long we offered the Cottage Red, but.
I think it was 1 or 2 years we did that.
So I'm going to break my poll into two parts. I'm going to assume the first part being how many liked the nose? One person, he liked the gunpowder gin, that's what it was. Two people liked the nose. All right, and how many liked the flavor?
I'm okay with it.
The beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Beginning of the, it
Yeah.
needs to be a 3-part question. The nose, the first part,
Yeah,
the flavor,
yeah.
and the end.
And then the end.
The beginning, yeah, I'm at the first
Right.
part.
How many just didn't like it at all? We have some on the fence then.
Yeah, it's
It's very different.
Ken's
Yeah.
raising his hand for no,
No.
without even being.
He's not,
yeah. Well,
It
way to
was.
go,
I
Ken.
think it was much better when I was eating it or drinking it with a little bit of the meat on my
Yeah.
board here. That helped.
Your left brain
Tastes
goes
like wine,
one way,
yeah.
your right brain goes the other on this one.
The first thing is and then it.
So we start. Oh, we need to rinse now. Yeah.
we need a rinse on this one, yeah.
What do we get to finish with, Bob?
We're finishing with
Here, would you do grapes again instead of fruit?
so the question was asked whether we would make wine from grapes again. And the answer, and I won't speak entirely for everybody else, but at least from my perspective, the answer would be no. We made grape wine because we wanted to learn how people have been making wine from classic grapes for thousands of years. I mean, we've been making wine from grapes for a long time. So there was a lot to learn. And we wanted to learn the techniques that were involved with turning grapes into wine. And so by importing grapes from California and from Chile, we were able to gain some insight into what was required to make great grape wine, and then take those skills that we learned and begin to apply them to the fruit that grows here. The challenge with, the real answer for me is why we wouldn't make great wine going into the future is I feel like importing grapes from California and making California wine in New Hampshire is like making somebody else's wine. They should make California wine in California. They have plenty of winemakers that are happy to do it. And they should make Chilean wine in Chile. And so the idea of driving grapes or floating grapes all over the globe doesn't make sense to me. And thank you. So that is a practice. There are lots of wineries that bring grapes from all over the world to make wine. And that's a decision they have to make, and more power to them. But we made the decision that we want to make wine from the fruit that grows here. And you can, we experimented with, in the early days, growing hybrid grapes. And there are a lot of vineyards in New Hampshire that grow hybrid grapes, or in New England. And hybrids were developed in the 1800s as a way to blend Vitis vinifera grapes with the local grapes that were cold climate stable. And they created grapes that had some of the characteristics of Vitis vinifera, the classic grape. And here, I'll give this to you.
I'm good. I got some.
And then they developed hundreds of varieties of these hybrids. They call them French hybrids or Minnesota hybrids. And over the years, those have been planted throughout the globe where it's too cold to grow the classic Merlot and Cab and Vitis vinifera grapes. We experimented with those. We planted a vineyard on our home. We put 120 vines of these hybrid grapes and learned about making wine from these unique grapes. And there are some people that are doing some good things. There's some really interesting hybrid wines out there that are delicious. The challenge is, first of all, we weren't farmers.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a farm. So the idea of acquiring a farm, planting many acres of these grapes, and learning how to become farmers and winemakers and wine sellers all at the same time was really far beyond what any of us thought we could do. And there's another component as well. in our research, although these cold climate grapes will grow well in this climate, they need a lot of help. They don't really like to grow. There's a lot of things working against us in these hybrid grapes. Mildew and moisture and humidity. And so most people growing hybrid grapes use a lot of chemicals. They have to be sprayed very consistently throughout the season in order to prevent the mold and mildew and these characters that will destroy the crop. I know of one, maybe two commercial wineries in the whole Northeast, including New York, that grow hybrid grapes organically. These are exceptional farmers that are doing this. It is really hard to do. And there are very few people capable of doing it. And so not only were we not farmers, we were clearly not at a place where we could have developed the ability or the skills necessary to grow the local hybrid grapes in a way that was organic. And that was important to us. The fruit that grows here in the Northeast can be grown organically. And I'll admit, not all of our wines are organic. It is hard to find organic growers growing the fruit we like to use at the volume we like to use, but we use sprayless fruit as much as possible, so not certified organic, but farmers that care as much about this issue as we do and use as minimal influence by chemicals as possible on their crops. Some of the crops that we make our wine with are organic. I don't believe any of them are actually certifiable as organic because the process to go through the FDA certification as an organic farm is really onerous. And I would rather work with a farmer that cares as much about it as me, but not force that farmer to have to go through a very onerous process with the FDA to get certified as organic. And quite frankly, there are farms that get certified in the US as organic who are allowed to use spray. So there's some gray areas in the organic certification that I think bring to question whether, truly how organic are those crops anyway. So anyway, that's why it is not likely that we're going to get back into making grape wine, either the imported grapes or hybrid grapes. And I don't know that we have a need. I have been really happy with and I'm amazed at the success that Ken has had turning some of the local fruits into some really amazing wines. And it's a niche that I think only we have. There's no other winery in the world that is focused in the manner that Ken is on crafting unique blends of locally sourced fruit. So I say we stay on this path and continue to make really great wine from the fruit that loves to grow here in our vicinity. And with that,
I was gonna say, we're already 5 minutes over.
we're 5 minutes over, so we're gonna go one more wine.
That was a big soapbox.
That was a big, sorry, it was an important question though. It's a really important question, and it gets to the bottom of who we are, what we're about, and this experiment right here is really about who we are, what we're about. I mean, this is, you're getting at the roots. They're getting at the very beginnings of what Hermit Woods was, before it was Hermit Woods, essentially. So it's worth
What are you
talking
pouring
about.
now?
Huh? I'm pouring a 2009 Hale Road crabapple, which I don't even know what is.
Oh my God.
In a
Oh no! So this
Yeah, let's hear from Ken.
this wine is probably a tannic monster. I remember getting so excited about what we could do with the Dolgo crabapple that we'd found in Bob's front yard, and I have two beautiful old crabapple trees in my yard. But they're very small crab apples, about the size of a chicken.
They're not Dolgos.
They're not Dolgos at all. But I thought, well, let's see what we can do with it. And so we harvested. I had the tractor here. I remember lifting somebody up in the bucket of the tractor to harvest some of these crab apples and pull them down. And when you bite into these, they're nothing but skin-sucking tannins. And made this wine. I still have a bottle or two in my cellar also, Bob, but I had one a couple of years ago and it was still really, really tannic and not much fruit.
So first of all, it's got some of that wanting to be, it's got a nice punt. Yeah. Some of that wanting to be raisin, sort of this is starting to turn into a little bit of a sort of rum or port-like character on the nose and in the first taste, right?
So our crab apple wines are never meant to be aged more than a couple
Years. Yeah. And we've found this to be true with all of our crab apples. We've laid down crab apples for 5 or 10 years before our Dolgo crab apples, and they get that raisiny to me. I'm not opposed to it. It's an interesting character. But this is definitely starting to turn. He killed it.
Yeah, I was gonna say poured heavy on that one.
It's definitely, yes. He figured
Sorry,
the last one, we're going to get the best of it.
Yeah. Sorry, Ken, you don't get any of this one.
When you said tannic monster, you had my heart.
So what it's interesting, the tannins it's very, your mouth puckers. When you finish this wine, it's this drying character on the back of your mouth. Yeah. But it's not harsh tannins. It's soft tannins.
That's good. When they were young, they were very rough, green tannins.
It's very appley.
Yeah.
Smells like licorice. Licorice, yes. It's got that. It's starting to turn on the nose toward that port-like character. That's the age. But it's remarkably fruity. The amount of actual apple character that is still coming through.
It tastes like. It smells kind of like the crab apple wine.
It tastes like an apple pie, like an undersweet apple pie, not an overly sweet, an undersweet apple pie.
Yeah, it definitely has a baked apple thing.
Baked apple, yeah.
Going on there. Yeah, and for me, it sort of just tastes like what I would imagine just eating apple skins would taste like.
Yeah.
It has that puckery, bitter, bitey, tannic.
Yeah, these little crab apples are nothing but skin. That's all they were.
not terribly flavorful.
I wish Dr. Intay was doing this one.
So we're well over our hour. So I'm going to take one more poll. You've all tasted this. How many of you like this wine?
I feel like we need different.
Wow.
First sip.
Yeah.
First sip,
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap. I'm not sure on that. This is like a huge bite. I'm like, second, okay, my palate's adjusting. This is better.
And did anybody just outright have no interest in drinking this wine any further?
I want it chilled. Chilled, it would be better.
You know what I would recommend? I'd recommend to everybody to go back to the Syrah now after having this wine.
We've got plenty of that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
I still have that, Ken, so I'm in.
All right.
I would recommend this as an apple jack.
Yeah, it is kind of
Yeah,
apple.
there you go.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how much apple still exists
Yep.
in this for as long as this is aged. It's really got.
Became the whole line of crab apples.
No, this was not the crab apple wine we sell today is made from a Dolgo crab apple. It's a very specific crab apple. This crab apple was a very different style crab apple, much smaller, much more tannic, much less sweet, not nearly the sugar content of a Dolgo. Dolgos make the ideal crab apple if you're going to make wine. Dolgo actually was brought over to this country in the 1800s to add flavor to cider. It's a cider making apple. So Dolgos are much better suited than this. I think that really grippy, dry tannin in the back is not ideal. It's not what you want. This is actually aged well because I think all of those tannins have caused it to hold up nicely, and the fruit is coming out. It's the best it's ever been. Yeah.
Give it that.
Give it that.
I'm not a fan. I don't think it's the right fruit. No.
So with that, I think we need to say goodbye to our audience and say thank you everybody for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you everybody. Stay tuned. We have lots more of these bottles in the cellar that will tell our story through different segments of our journey. And we will be having another version of this tasting sometime in another month or two. Until then, thank you for joining us. We will be live again next Monday at 5:30. Cheers, everybody. We'll see you next Monday.
Cheers, all.
Cheers, everyone.